may open. I accept that we want to support our local businesses. I don't think anyone disagrees with that. I subscribe to the argument that 4 days off in a row is unique in our country at the moment. And that is special. That allows people to plan events like weddings and reunions and all sorts of things around those guaranteed 4 days off in a row that you have no other time in the year. So I'm not prepared to remove that, and I'm not prepared to add to the straws on the back of the breakdown of our community strength and our family unit. So like I did last time we discussed this item, I am speaking against the motion on the table. I'm on the side of hope that this council puts community interest ahead of commercial interest on this matter, and it does not put that next straw on the back of our family unit breakdown. Thank you.
All right, Councillor Bogue and then Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Mayor. I too speak against this resolution for a range of reasons. And I don't come from, personally, I'm not a religious person, although I do adhere to Christian values. So my first reason is the breakdown of the actual submissions. 42% in favour, 58% against. Now, many of our decisions as a council are affected by, influenced strongly by what our submitters say. For example, the pool location, representation review, etc. So I'm supporting the majority of our submitters. Many are opposed, are not based, their opposition isn't based on religion. Retailers, there are some retailers, workers, human rights advocates, so it's not just a matter of religion versus commerce. So when I read the officers or the recommendation, it was following considering of submissions. I thought, okay, well, I've considered the submissions. I had a look at them. This is before I heard what I heard today. And a strong majority were in favour of us not opening on Easter Sunday or against the proposal. And then I see the main reason why this proposal is worded the way that it was is that council officers have no opinion about the religious merits of trading or not trading on Easter Sunday. Now, I don't see this as a religion versus commerce discussion. It is more, for me, it's commerce versus the family. So they refer to city vision. The recommendation is based on the fact that it's a tourist city, etc., etc. It aligns with the open for business principle of the City Vision document. Also, another principle of City Vision is people first, putting people first. And that's where I'm coming from. I think the City Vision document is fantastic, but let's put people before we put commerce. Another reason why I'm voting against this is choice has been mentioned many times as a reason why people vote in favour. Choice is in the eye of the beholder as far as I can see. Many workers don't have choice. And I'll refer you to some of the submissions, the written submissions that we received, which stated that really clearly what that's all about. It's, hang on it, on page 17, Michelle Fright said, as a retail worker, I only get 2 days off a year with my family, Easter and Christmas. Every other day I have to work. Give us a break, please. Another one on that page was Deborah Burnside, who tells us that, if I can find it. Oh, sorry, no, she's page 19. The pressure on an employee to work on this day is unfair. Mr. Chard on that page, Easter and Christmas are the only days where people involved in retail get family time without having to be rostered for work. To say that all employees will be able to opt out of the work on Easter is naive. Even some of the retailers on page 21, Spec Eyewear, saying that after a hugely busy summer season, a compulsory day off is a godsend. And Megan Landon and James Landon, who are retailers, are saying, as a retailer, it's one of the only days we have to spend with our families. And James Landon, allowing others to trade will result in me being forced to do the same and to work those hours personally, as I will not impose this on my staff. So it's the only one of 2 weekends we can have family time without being on call. And finally, I like the statement from John Woods on page 25. I feel shop employees are entitled to have at least 3.5 days off without being pressured to work by their employer. So I'm voting against this resolution because I don't believe it is a matter of religion versus commerce. It's about us being kind and caring and wanting to support our families and our family time. I'm also voting for it because a majority of submitters, as somebody said on Facebook this morning, it seems that submitting is a waste of time. Looking at the proposal, those submissions were not taken into consideration. At the moment, we have only 3.5 days of year without shops, and this would be 2.5 if we move to accept this proposal. And as I said to one of the submitters, what's next? Christmas Day. So should this Easter Sunday trading proposal pass, workers and retailers may or may not have a choice on whether they work or open on Easter Sunday. But we definitely today now, we have a choice to vote in favour of the proposal, and in that say that our most important principle is that of promoting commerce, of being open for trade, or to vote against this proposal and put a stake in the sand saying, yes, for 362.5 days of the year, let's be open for trade, but let's hold fast to the 3.5 days we have currently. Let's say families come first, and let's be true to our City Vision principle of putting people first.
Thank you, Councillor Bogue. Councillors, we've now had 3 speakers in a row against the proposal. Are there any speakers in support of the proposal? Councillor Taylor, then Councillor Haig.
I, like Councillor Bogue, don't come from a very deep religious background, although I did attend church and various things as a youth. I also don't see it as a debate between religion and commerce or commerce and family. I actually go a little bit further back and see it as a fundamental decision around choice. And as an employer of 150 staff, my staff don't get a choice because they are rostered and they work in an industry where they are required to work on a Sunday, whatever day it falls. So talking to them, it's very interesting to see that some of them actually would have that day rostered off, so it would be an opportunity for them to do the shopping that they can't do on other days. But I go back to the philosophical thing, and some of our submitters like to look at the historical and what's been happening in our society, and one of the statistics that I particularly was interested in, and although I've said it's not a religious debate, it's interesting to see the significance of religion in our society is actually diminishing incredibly between 69% in 1991 who said they had significant or they were Christian to 48% in 2013, and those who described themselves as no religion in 1991 of 20%, rising in 2013 to 42%. So although it's not a religious debate, I think the religious part of our society is gradually losing its emphasis. But if we go to the principle of freedom of choice, an Austrian philosopher, Mr. Hayek, who was awarded the 1975 Nobel Prize and is a social theorist, stated that our freedom of choice in a competitive society rests on the fact that if one person refuses to satisfy our wishes, we can turn to another. But if we face a monopolist, we are at his absolute mercy. And I think we need to provide that freedom of choice. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Haig.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the difficult thing for us as councillors today is trying to look at the evidence before us and also take into account the feelings and beliefs which are very genuinely held of the submitters that have come here today. Talking on both sides of the fence, actually, it was great to see some ministers say, actually, we don't want to impose our belief about what you do on Easter Sunday. If you want to go shopping, go for it. I found that interesting. But certainly the majority of ministers have been keen that we preserve Easter Sunday. I think as a council that our role is as an enabler rather than as a body that shuts down options. I believe we need to open up opportunities for our communities rather than close them off. And I note that we have been in the business of Easter Sunday trading for the last 2 years, and I have not heard, I mean, Wayne actually mentioned this, of any dramatic deterioration in any of the key social problems that have been raised today over that time. I think that when we look at some of the issues that have been raised, like a breakdown in social cohesion, a breakdown in our family life, abuse of employment laws, those are all incredibly big, complex, knotty problems that people are grappling with all the time. I think it's a really long bow to draw to say that by deciding not to allow people the ability to open a shop on Easter Sunday will somehow address or fix any of those issues. I don't think there's an evidence base around that. I understand why that's an attractive argument, but to me, I can't really see that. I think there are risks around our more vulnerable employees, but as I said when we were talking about the submissions, there's a law at work. There are unions available to support. There are mitigating factors in there that should mean that we can minimise those risks. And again, you have to balance it. Is the risk of that happening more important than allowing our city to be open and allowing people to have opportunities to do things on Easter Sunday? I don't think the balance is there. The strongest argument for me has been around the family one, and that's a really tempting one, isn't it? This idea that we need a day when we can get together as a family. But I would note that families now look different. They behave differently. They believe different things from 50, 60, 70 or more years ago. And I think that if we want to think around family life, it's really important that families, no matter what they look like, have the opportunity to make a choice about what family life means for them and about what they do together as a family. Finally, I think as councillors, it's our duty to listen to all of the community, and that's so hard because everyone has different views on this. The members of the community that I have spoken to have had very mixed views, but the really clear message that came through for me, which has swayed me to supporting this motion, has been it is not your job as a councillor to decide whether or not I should work on an Easter Sunday. Please let me make that decision myself.
Thank you, Councillor Hope. Any further comments? Councillor Wise?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Firstly, I'd just like to make a comment. Councillor Bogue pointed out that we do obviously have a larger percentage of submissions that are against this policy today. However, as a council, we're actually required to weigh up the submission content just as much as the volume of submissions. So we do need to look at both of those factors when we're considering and deliberating on our decision today, and not just the volume of submissions either for or against. I, again, like many councillors here, I think arrived today feeling very torn by this because it is a very emotive issue, and we all can see the pros and cons for either side. Personally, I absolutely sympathise with the concerns around the loss of family time. However, the reality is that currently some of our retailers are in fact the only businesses that are unable to trade or to work or operate on Easter Sunday. As pointed out by Councillor Taylor, a percentage of our retailers, our hospitality, our tourist attractions, our health and emergency workers, even our professionals. For example, I'm an accountant, and often our staff choose to work over Easter weekend because it is one of our peak times. So there is a huge percentage of our community that do have the ability at this time to make that choice. We've heard from several submitters today that they believe our retailers should also be given that choice. And we do have legislation in place to provide for our employees to refuse to work should they wish to not work. And I appreciate that some of our more vulnerable employees may feel that they're unable to do that. But we do have to also have faith in our unions and in our employers to be responsible employers to ensure that they are given this choice. I also think that there are some employees within the retail sector that would probably prefer to work on Easter Sunday rather than taking it as unpaid leave or as using one of their annual leave days. And again, we need to respect and give them that choice. The other key consideration today, obviously, is around respecting our community members who believe we should not allow retailers to open on the grounds of religious belief. After listening to the submissions today, I have reached the conclusion that we should not compel people to do one thing or another on the basis of a religious belief, which many of our community do not necessarily hold themselves. So in conclusion, I'm speaking in support of the motion today, as I believe we should be providing that freedom of choice to our community.
Thank you. We've had 3 speakers. We've had a mover. We've had 3 speakers against, 3 speakers for. Is there anybody that wants to speak against the motion?
To the vote then.
Therefore, is there anybody that wants to speak for the motion? Councillor Price, did you want?
Yes, I'll make it very short because I'm speaking in favour of the motion. I've listened to what everybody has said, and I quite clearly base it on a freedom of choice. A shop does not have to open if they don't want to. A person doesn't have to work if they don't want to. If they do want to, they can. So it's purely a freedom of choice. You can make a grievance against someone, and I understand that people are saying they don't feel comfortable taking a grievance out about someone, but it actually costs nothing to go to mediation with a support person. So you can, and the unions can go along with you. I ran a business, and if there was any difficulty about a situation between my manager and an employee, they would have mediation with me at first stage with some support person. And I certainly wasn't in a position where I'd lie to people, and I'd give them the privilege of, and we'd sort it out generally. And in this case, I think there is a mechanism there. We also can't blame our decision on a deficiency in the law. If the law's not working, someone else should be fixing that, not us. So anyway, the other thing that I was quite surprised with, and I don't think it's a religion v commercial or whatever, I was quite surprised that some churches actually spoke in favour of this happening. So there is a small, what I see, a split in the religion side of things. But the end result is I come back to the fact that everybody should have freedom of choice. Thank you.
Right, so are there any other speakers at all on either side of the argument? Anybody else want to speak? I don't want to cut this short. Everybody needs to have the opportunity to speak if they wish.
We shouldn't lose sight of the airport that we've just extended either.
Sorry, you shouldn't be sitting at this table. We've actually allowed that to happen because of Wayne's situation. So, councillors, you've all had, everybody that wants to have a say has had a say. Don't want to be accused of bullying or anything. Don't want to take a personal grievance. So I'll put the motion, and the essential part of the motion is Part B, which says, following consideration of submissions, Council adopts the Easter Sunday Trading Policy 2018 to allow shops to trade on Easter Sunday in the Napier District. So all those in favour, please say aye. Can I have a show of hands, please?
Yes.
Looking over here, Wayne.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Am I correct?
Yes.
Double count.
And yourself?
And therefore, those against?
Three.
And yourself, are you voting?
I don't need to vote.
You should.
Interesting.
Sure. All right. Well, I'm in favour.
You're in favour?
You need to do that again, just to clarify, because you've got your hand up against.
All right, we need to clarify that so as we don't have any confusion. All those in favour of the motion, please say aye.
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 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Thank you.
Therefore, the ayes have it. Thank you very much.
So, can we ask for our names to be, for a division?
The split will be given because
Okay.
a division was taken.
Oh, cool.
Yep. So that's how that's all. So it's recorded who voted for and against it. So, councillors, thank you very much. Thank you very much to the submitters, to the members of the public. Yep. So, can I just advise councillors that we are now going to have lunch, and if we could come back at 1:30. If we can come back at 1:30, please.
For the other meeting,
No?
for your meeting.
The library meeting.
Yeah, library. Yeah, the seminar at 1:30. Where's that? That's here. 1:30 here, please, for the library seminar.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Is she coming for a